I'm certain of it. The welfare system in our country is not functioning as it should. Just as Mrs. Thatcher found in the 1980s, more and more people have been tossed onto the scrap heap and trapped in a cycle of dependency and inactivity. The number of those claiming disability benefits has risen by a third since the pandemic. It's right, of course, that those who are genuinely unable to provide for themselves are looked after. We all want a safety net in this country. But we should not be blind to the rise and the misuse of our system. In 2011, 20% of those who were sent for work capability assessments were signed off as unfit to work. Today it's 65%. We are not 2 or 3 times sicker as a country than we were just over 10 years ago. Yet the number of people claiming disability each month has doubled. Labour now have a choice. Proceed with Mel Stride's reforms that would have seen 400,000 fewer people on long-term sickness and disability benefits, or consign the country and hundreds of thousands of people to crippling welfare bills. They need to tighten up work capability assessments because too many indicators now show that we are medicalising normal human experiences, signing off as incapable those for whom work could be a valuable source of support and self-esteem. And they need tougher sanctions for those who refuse to take up suitable jobs. They should be shorter, the claimant review point, for the long-term unemployed, from 18 months to 12 months, so those failing to comply with their conditions can have their benefits removed sooner. If we can get people back into work, we can ensure that taxes are cut, and we can do so responsibly this time. I'm setting a very simple target. Let's bring the inactivity rate back down to its pre-pandemic level. Bring almost 500,000 people back into the workforce. Increase GDP, increase tax revenue, reduce spending. A win-win for everyone in our country. If we can get the disability and incapacity caseload back to its 2019 level, we can take roughly £12 billion off the working age benefits bill. That would equate to almost 2p off the basic rate of income tax. No more excuses about the tax burden, just delivering what we promised and what the British people expect. To help those people back into the economy, we need to be able to give them the skills that they need to succeed. We are expecting to spend almost £5 billion a year on adult skills and the programmes related to them. But this money can be spent far better. The data shows, for many people, it's apprenticeships that provide the targeted boost in their incomes and earnings that they need. The government should be funding more apprenticeships, not fewer. We will put the funds into courses that deliver for the people taking them. And we will do this at the university level too. 1 in 5 graduates ends up financially worse off than if they'd never gone to university at all. 1 in 5. That is a moral scandal and a massive public policy failure. Young people are being sold a better future, and then they're being left out of pocket for worthless slips of paper. The last Conservative government delivered a revolution for our young people. Nick Gibb and Michael Gove oversaw a revolution in England's schools and a dizzying rise in the international league tables for literacy and numeracy. Now we need to do exactly the same for those leaving school. We're sending people to university who would benefit far more from building practical skills. It's time to end Blair's failed experiment with higher education, close down failed institutions and replace them with apprenticeship hubs for young and old alike, giving people the real chance of the better life that they deserve. We should never again be reliant on foreign labour to fill the gaps in our economy. Never again for brickies and welders and electricians who build this country and empower up our economy. We can be training these people here in our own country. If we were to withhold student loans from the worst performing 10% of courses for graduate outcomes, we would have 130,000 fewer students going to university. With this funding, we could fund the biggest expansion in apprenticeships and vocational skills programs in more than a generation. We could expand the 100% funding for small businesses taking on apprentices for younger than 19 to include SMEs and enable universities to become new institutes of technology. With these policies, we would ensure that there isn't drama, there's not excuses, just genuinely delivering the real skills that we need. And we should give the next generation a chance in the working world too. We want to ensure that these young people get onto the housing ladder. Britain's housing market is a national disgrace. High rental costs are delivering the outcomes that none of us would have expected a decade ago. They're decimating the finances of young people trying to start families. High house prices are putting the dream of home ownership out of reach for far too many young people. Simple economics tells us that if we don't have to look far for the answer. Immigration has soared and house building has fallen. As the CPS itself has set out so well, we are 1.3 million homes short of the number that we need. It shouldn't be surprising that as a result of this failure, the number of homes being built is falling, house prices have risen, and we are putting strains on the incomes and the livelihoods of young people. As a minister, I got housing starts up to their highest level since 1987 when Margaret Thatcher was Prime Minister, and changed housing design to ensure that the homes that we built are actually beautiful and in neighbourhoods that people want to live in. But we clearly need to go much, much further. The Labour government seems to think that you can fix things by declaring arbitrary targets. But as always with central planning, they're going to build homes in the wrong places. They've imposed a 1,300% increase in Redcar and a 623% increase in Burnley, while in London and Birmingham, they're slashing the housing targets to save the blushes of failing Labour mayors. The simple truth of the matter is that we don't need government to tell us where to build. We just need to look at house prices themselves. Labour slashed the housing target in Tower Hamlets by 58%. The average rent in Tower Hamlets is £27,000 a year. In Redcar, the average rent is £6,900 a year. Where do you think needs more housing and needs those homes now? The market is screaming at us to build in London, in Manchester, in our big city centres, precisely the opposite policy to the one being pursued by this Labour government. Rather than settling for urban sprawl, we need to build densely and we need to build beautifully. We can protect our countryside by building better and making better use of the space that we actually have. Our plan is a simple one: to unpick the housing deficit and ensure that we add millions of homes that we need across the country, to add them in London and Manchester and Birmingham and our other world-class cities. There is so much value to be unlocked in our country by fixing Britain's broken housing crisis that we can do this without creating winners and losers. We need to zone these urban areas for densification, speeding and simplifying the planning process, And we'll work out to ensure that residents in the suburbs can decide on the densification, the look and the feel of those homes, and how they share the value that is being created. No more drama, no more excuses, just delivering the homes that Britain desperately needs. The potential for growth is huge. In the United States, economists have estimated that reducing restrictions on house building in just 3 large cities to the average for the rest of the country could have increased US GDP by around 9% in the 45 years leading to 2009. In Britain, the distortions in our housing market are far, far larger. And so too, the gains for simply allowing people to live where they want to and to build where it's needed will be equally large. Alongside dismantling the vetocracy, we will tackle the other great barrier to Britain's growth. British companies are facing the highest electricity prices in the developed world, driven by a combination of a short-sighted policy and a failure to adapt to low-cost technologies. Cheap, secure and abundant energy is a critical part of the modern economy. As the world shifts to making greater use of digital services like artificial intelligence, we need to be able to build and to power data centres if we want to remain competitive in the modern economy. At the moment, Ed Miliband is gambling our energy security on a combination of highly expensive, unreliable renewables, cutting gas that fills the gap when the wind doesn't blow and the sun doesn't shine, and overseeing the closing of our nuclear power plants. We are spending billions to subsidise a less secure grid. Rather than heading to the future of demand management, a polite euphemism for blackouts and shutdowns, we should be embracing a new ideology of energy abundance. And we can do so by learning from our friends overseas. South Korea builds nuclear power stations at a fraction of the price of Hinkley Point C. We can make use of their expertise, build low-cost power plants based on their specifications, not reinventing the wheel, and provide the solid, reliable baseload that industry in this country desperately needs today and in the future. But to do that, we need to cut through the crippling environmental assessments, fast-tracking planning, and identifying the brownfield sites to build them on. If we treated security in this way, if we went for cheap and reliable energy as the national emergency that it is, we would be building 5 Korean-style nuclear reactors by 2032, 28 gigawatts of baseload capacity, providing almost a quarter of forecast demand, and the platform our grid needs to actually work. No more excuses about spiralling energy bills, just delivering cheap, secure energy that the British people and our economy actually needs and deserves. It's a simple agenda. Rather than a big state that fails, we need a small state that works. Rather than treating our economy as in inevitable decline, let's get it back into business. Rather than heading further down the path to ever more government intervention, we need a lighter touch approach than the one we've had in recent decades. It comes back to the fundamental rewiring of the relationship between the citizen and the state that the Thatcher Revolution and the CPS oversaw. We need to create an economy where risk-taking is rewarded and the private sector free to deliver the growth that we need. And it is within our grasp to achieve it, to let people build homes, to cut energy prices, to stop paying people not to work, and to cut the benefits bill to benefit everyone in our country. Stop subsidising worthless degrees and give young people the skills that they need to prosper in life. And bring accountability back to government to cut waste and to cut the tax burden responsibly. The rewards are huge. If we get the basics right, we can watch Britain boom again. That is my plan. No drama, no more excuses, just a Conservative party focused on delivery, grounded in the concerns of ordinary people, seeing and serving the British people once again. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
We've got a few minutes for questions.
We'll do a few questions. Great. So the first one, I think, was from Claire from the Mail. Good morning.
Good morning. Kemi Badenoch has said in an interview today that she's Labour's worst nightmare because if she wins, they won't be able to portray the right as prejudice. Is this a fair argument? Like you're advocating for a return to austerity if you win as leader. Is that how you describe it?
Well, on your second point, I don't see it in those terms. I see the British state as having ample opportunity to make savings and to cut taxes responsibly. I've given a few examples of that today. In the welfare budget, we only have to return to the world as it was pre-pandemic to save billions of pounds that we can invest elsewhere or use to cut taxes in a responsible manner. I've set out how we could cut 100,000 jobs in our civil service merely by returning to the way it was in 2015. There are so many opportunities to create a smaller state that actually works, not the big state that fails today. And look, with respect to my opponent, I agree with Kemi. I think that our party faces an existential challenge right now. Our party has no divine right to exist. That's why we need to get the choice right in this leadership election. And that's why I stand for ending the drama, ending the excuses, and actually delivering for the British people. And all of the polling suggests that I am best placed to win back the voters that we've lost from Reform, from the Labour Party, from the Lib Dems, and those who stayed at home. 3 months ago, my campaign was nowhere. I was the rank outsider in this contest. The wind is within our sails. The momentum is with us. What we've got to do now is persuade the members of this party to grasp this opportunity to restore our party, to get it back into business and to win the next election. Because I am not standing to be a leader of the opposition. I'm standing to be the next Prime Minister of this country. And that is the choice before the members of our party. Now, I'm going to go to, thank you very much, I'm going to go to Calgie at the Express.
Morning. Your policy on housing and energy will clearly require enormous reforms to our planning system, so NIMBYs can no longer hold up applications. Can you detail some of those changes? Would they, for example, include repealing the Town and Country Planning Act and environmental protections? And as a second, can you clarify whether 2p off income tax will be a Tory policy in the next manifesto?
Well, on your second point, we're not in government right now, and I'm not going to write the manifesto for 4 or 5 years' time. But I've set out what the choice is. That is within our grasp if this Labour government makes the right decisions. They have so far chosen to abandon the reforms that Mel Stride was taking forward, let alone going further. And that is going to lead to taxes rising in the budget at the end of this month for working people, for our middle classes. Those are bad choices. If we make the right choices, like I'm advocating, then our country can be a very different one. We can have good quality public services, but we can also have a dynamic economy, and we can bring down the tax burden for everyone. That is what I want to see. That would be my mission if I'm lucky enough to lead the party forwards. On your first point, yes, we are going to need to reform our sclerotic planning system. If we want to be the party of low taxes, of business, of economic growth, of getting young people onto the housing ladder, of cheap and reliable energy, we also have to be the party that takes on the planning system and improves it. And I've set out 2 ways in which we should be doing that. Firstly, we should be looking to zone parts of our big cities, like inner East London, for example, where there is brownfield land and ample opportunity for regeneration. In a place like that, let's help small builders and entrepreneurs to get building, to develop new homes, to create jobs and economic growth, and to help solve the housing crisis. That would be a big reform, but it's one that would help to drive our country forwards. And on energy, we need to ensure that we can build new nuclear faster than we do today. And I've set out some suggestions as how we do that. Why reinvent the wheel? Why not take, for example, the means of building nuclear power stations from a great country like South Korea and put those things into practice here? Why not ensure that we use the planning system in an imaginative way to get building new nuclear fast by instead of having the government set the planning permissions rather than going through long-winded processes? There are definite, clear policy changes that we could make that could fix those both of those key problems very quickly. I'm going to go to Noah from The Sun.
Thanks.
Good morning.
Morning. Something that business chiefs and economists always talk about is how stability in the economy has been an issue, and that's come up in a lot of conversations with Rachel Reeves. They just want stability in terms of policies. Have you done an economic sort of impact assessment of your pledge to leave the ECHR, and how do you think business chiefs would respond to that pledge? Would they be in favour of it? And quickly, if I may, your response to the New England manager. Thank you.
Every journalist asking 2 questions.
I know. Who would have thought? Look, on your first point, there is no impact on our economy of leaving the European Court of Human Rights. You know, this is entirely separate from our economy, but it has a huge impact on our ability to control our borders, to remove foreign criminals from our country, and to combat terrorism. In fact, the main impact for our economy, if there is one, is it's going to save us a lot of money, because we're currently spending billions of pounds, as the Labour government is acknowledging today, on housing illegal migrants who are here. When we learn that the Home Office is just about to take on more hotels, rather than closing them there, they're procuring new ones. So that is a win-win for everyone. On the New England manager, I have to confess, I haven't even seen this news whilst I've been here this morning.
Thomas Tuchel.
Ah, OK. That's a good choice. We'll see. Right, I'll go to Kamal Ahmed from The Telegraph.
Thanks, Robert. Today, the private member's bill to make assisted dying legal has been laid before the House. You've made your position clear on it. Kim Leadbeater, the MP who has laid the bill, has said that on this issue of assisted dying legalisation, I think we've got a duty and a moral obligation to change the law. Does that suggest that people who are arguing from your side of the fence are immoral? And I wondered how you responded to that.
Well, I think this is a profound change that will affect our country and everyone in it for generations to come. And so the number one objective is to get this right and not to rush it. And I worry that that is exactly what's happening right now. We need to learn from what's happened in other countries around the world, like Canada, for example. And I've been to Canada and spoken to ministers there who have been involved in this decision. And I would argue that a well-intentioned change there has led to some very significant, unexpected adverse consequences. So I am a sceptic of changing the law. I understand where the motivation comes from. We all do. One of the defining experiences of my childhood was having my own grandmother live with me and my family for many years, living through a very debilitating and ultimately terminal illness. And so I understand why people might want to do this, but we have to get it right and not just rush into something that might ensure that we live to regret it. So I would urge the Labour government to think carefully about this, to provide the time that's necessary to consult, for Parliament to properly scrutinise it, and to think carefully about the precedents in other parts of the world, which at the moment lead me to the conclusion that I would vote against him. Thank you. And then we have Aubrey from The Times. Aubrey, good morning.
Good morning, Robert. You said you want to cut taxes responsibly this time.
You criticised the mini-budget, but do you think the tax cuts under Rishi Sunak were the right ones and sustainable? And on a related note, if I may, you said that you wanted to reduce civil service headcount but pay them competitive salaries. Do you think there should be a cap on what a civil servant should be paid? Should anyone be paid more than the Prime Minister?
Well, today you can earn more than the Prime Minister. You just have to get sign-off for it, as Sue Gray managed to do quite easily. Look, I think that we should be ensuring the civil service has talented people, including coming from the private sector, and sometimes that requires them to be paid more. But the key thing is accountability, and that is what we have not seen in recent years. If you look at the NHS, for example, in 90% of NHS trusts last year, not a single manager was sacked for poor performance. Can you imagine a business or other organisation operating like that? That is obviously wrong. What I want us to do for the civil service and all of our public services is what we did for education in the 2010s. Empower the good managers. Ensure that they can thrive and prosper in their careers. And yes, possibly be paid more. But weed out the poor performers. Because we shouldn't be letting down the British public with the current culture of poor performance you see in so much of our public sector. That's what I want to change. And I do think we can reduce the numbers. Under the guise of Brexit and COVID, the size of the civil service ballooned. And that needs to be reversed now. That is an easy way in which we can save the taxpayer hundreds of millions of pounds. And it shocks me that one of the first things that Rachel Reeves and Keir Starmer did upon entering office was to scrap the plan that had been created by Jeremy Hunt to reduce the size of the civil service, rather than going even further, as I would do if I was lucky enough to lead the party and the country. And then, sorry, your other question, Aubrey, was?
Yeah, it was the first one on were the tax cuts pursued by Rishi Sunak correct and sustainable?
Well, I was grateful to Rishi and to Jeremy Hunt for the good work that they did in restoring our reputation, or beginning to restore our reputation, for sound management of the public finances. And I think their choice of cutting taxes for working age people was a sensible one, because Conservatives should be on the side of working people, and we should have an offer to the next generation in particular. And so that is a sensible and logical way to start. But we need to go further. And I want to reclaim the mantle for low taxes and pro-growth that we lost in the mini-budget, because the failure of the mini-budget was to accompany lower taxes with massive spending, with the energy price guarantee that accompanied it, the largest single welfare bailout, I think, in our country's modern history. What I've set out today are ways in which we can cut taxes responsibly by accompanying them, by earning them, with reductions in the size of the state, whether that's by reducing the size of the civil service or making changes to our welfare system. That is the way that Conservatives should conduct themselves. That is what I want to do if I'm lucky enough to lead this party forward in the future. Very good. I've been told to end it there.
Apologies.
Very good. All right. Well, thank you very much indeed. It's been good to be here. Thanks for the questions. And look forward to seeing you on the campaign trail. Thank you. Very good. Thank you.